Horror Stories: The Forgotten Visitor. Once upon a chilling winter night, in a quaint, isolated cottage nestled deep within the woods, lived a young woman named Emma. She had inherited the cottage from her late grandmother, and despite its remote location, Emma found solace in its rustic charm. She decided to spend the weekend alone in her grandmother's memory. The cottage was surrounded by dense trees, their branches clawing at the windows like skeletal fingers. A heavy blanket of snow had draped itself over the landscape, muffling every sound. Emma found comfort in the solitude, basking in the warmth of a roaring fireplace and the soft glow of her grandmother's antique lamps. As night fell, Emma cozied up with a cup of hot cocoa, the only source of light being the flickering flames dancing in the fireplace. The wind howled outside, making the cottage creak and groan, creating eerie symphonies that sent shivers down her spine. Just as Emma was beginning to relax, a soft knock echoed from the front door. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Who could be out there in the middle of nowhere at this hour? Gathering her courage, she grabbed a flashlight and cautiously approached the door. With trembling hands, Emma swung the door open, revealing nothing but the cold, empty darkness of the forest. She dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on her, but as she was about to close the door, she noticed a set of footprints leading from the woods towards the cottage. She shone her flashlight on them, her breath catching in her throat. The footprints were fresh, filled with snow, and led right up to her doorstep. Someone had been here recently. Panic seized her as she considered her isolation. She locked the door, praying it was just a wandering hiker who had lost their way. Yet, unease gnawed at her. She tried to call for help, but discovered there was no cell reception. Emma knew she had to be cautious, so she armed herself with a fireplace poker and searched every room in the cottage, finding nothing out of the ordinary. Eventually, exhaustion overtook her and she retreated to her bedroom, barricading herself inside. Hours passed, the winds howling growing louder, as if mocking her fear. Just as Emma started to believe she had overreacted, she heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible. Her heart raced as she strained to listen. The whisper turned into a voice, soft and haunting. "Emma, let me in, Emma." It was a woman's voice, familiar yet eerie. She could have sworn it sounded like her grandmother, who had passed away years ago. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the poker tighter. There was no way it could be her grandmother. It had to be a trick. "Emma, don't you miss me?" The voice seemed to come from right outside her bedroom window. Emma's breath hitched as she slowly approached the window, peeking through the curtains. She gasped in horror. There, in the moonlight, stood a shadowy figure. It had her grandmother's face, but twisted and contorted into a nightmarish visage. Its eyes glowed with malevolence as it continued to whisper her name. Panicking, Emma stumbled backward, knocking over a chair and making a loud crash. The figure outside jerked its head in her direction, its eyes locking onto hers. It began to pound on the window, its voice now a frantic shriek. "Emma, open the door, Emma! Let me in!" Emma fled the bedroom, desperate to escape the nightmare at her window. She raced through the cottage, grabbing her car keys, and fled into the snow-covered night. As she drove away from the cottage, the figure at the window grew smaller in the rear-view mirror, still screaming her name. She found refuge in a nearby town, explaining the bizarre events to the police. They searched her grandmother's cottage, but found no sign of the sinister visitor. Emma never returned to that cottage, haunted by the memory of her grandmother's twisted spectral form. To this day, she wonders if she truly encountered a vengeful spirit